And we're going to be talking about our Bible reading, not just for this week, but for the next 2 weeks. We're going to be looking at Acts 25 and 26 together because thematically it doesn't really make much sense to
Yeah.
separate them.
No, 25 and 26 work together.
Yeah, it's kind of what's really sort of two stories.
Right?
And the second story begins in 25 and works into 26. We'll explain all that as we go through this together. Big idea here. We're continuing in that Roman phase of the trial,
Paul's being tried.
and we get two more. We had Felix in 24. In 25, we're going to have Festus, who is the new leader, and then you're going to have Agrippa, who pops up.
Right.
And basically, those are the two stories in the chapter. You have his defense before Festus, and then his defense before Agrippa. So it just makes sense to do these two together. So
Right.
looking at 25, the Festus story really kind of has two pieces to
Two
it.
places.
Yeah, two places.
Two
In
places.
fact, yeah, that's one of the easy ways to work the chapter is
Right.
to identify where they are and who the players are.
Right.
And so at the beginning of 25, we have Festus, new guy in town. He's going up to Jerusalem to make nice with the Jews, and of course they bring the case to Paul.
Because they're still mad about it 2 years later. They
Yeah,
are
yeah,
still
they
mad about
haven't
it.
dealt with him, and so
Yep.
he invites him up to Caesarea, where there's a hearing
Right.
before him,
Right.
and more trickery employed,
Right?
trying to get them to move Paul.
You move the venue, change
Yes.
the trial venue to Jerusalem so they can kill him
Yeah, those guys who had said they weren't going to eat
until.
until he was dead, I guess they're really hungry.
I was
after
going to
2
say,
years.
yeah, maybe some new guys.
I think they probably abandoned that plan. Anyway, so the key thing that happens in the Festus piece of this
Right.
is down in verse 11, right?
That's right. Yeah, at the end of the day, Paul does not want to be taken back to Jerusalem, and so realizes his only real option at this point is to appeal to Caesar, which he has a right to as a Roman citizen.
Right. And so that really becomes a key moment, not just in this hearing before Festus, but really for the rest of the
That's right.
book, because
Right.
now because
The final
of,
journey because of this.
yeah, because of that appeal, everything now is oriented toward getting him
To Rome.
So then we pick up in verse 13,
Mm-hmm.
and the players change a little bit, or maybe I should say we add
We add
some new
someone.
players to this. King Agrippa and Bernice come to Caesarea,
Right.
and Festus hits him up for a little help.
Yeah, and that makes sense because Festus is the Roman representative who's new here. He takes Felix's place. But Agrippa is a descendant of Herod the Great, so that their family has deep roots in the area, kind of ruling under the Romans, ruling on behalf of the Romans as proxies. And that's why, Festus wants help. He's new. He doesn't get all these Jewish ways and arguments. But Agrippa, as a longtime local ruler with deep roots going back all the way to Herod the Great, and baby Jesus and all that stuff, he's going to know something about these Jews, these arguments, these Christians, and what all this is about. So Festus wants help.
And so really the rest of 25
Right,
is just sort of laying the groundwork
right,
for this appearance,
Right.
Or this defense he's going to make before Agrippa. And the reason we're blending the chapters is chapter 26
Right.
actually records Paul's speech, one of several speeches
Right.
that Acts includes, and several speeches from Paul. And so really the whole chapter
yeah.
is this defense that he makes and the record of his speech that, if you wanted to summarize, is really, once again, as he's done before, the retelling of his life story.
That's right. And that's interesting. It's about the gospel and it's about the truth, but it's about how God in Christ entered into Jesus's life and Paul's life and changed it. And so, especially when you get in the end, the irony is Paul uses his life story to try to preach the gospel to Agrippa and to Festus, because it's interesting. You get to verse 24, Festus with a loud voice, "Paul, you're out of your mind. Your great learning has driven you mad." But Paul, I'm not out of my mind, most excellent Felix. I'm actually speaking true and rational, sane words. And he didn't particularly appeals to Agrippa because he knows Agrippa is a local who's been around this a long time.
You know the story,
Do you believe the prophets? I know that you believe, Agrippa.
right?
And so Agrippa famously, that's the context. Agrippa famously says, "You almost, or in a short time, you would persuade me to become a Christian."
Right.
Paul is connecting dots, but like Felix before, not wanting to hear too much, getting a little afraid, Agrippa will find ways to procrastinate, and that's kind of the end of Agrippa's line there.
Yet the important thing is down in verse 31,
Yeah.
they reach a legal conclusion.
Well, and that's right, because the whole Paul's hearing before Agrippa was Festus saying literally, he says a couple of times back in chapter 25, it's fights over their own religion, but I don't know what to say. He's not done the evils I thought he would be accused. There's nothing there.
They were going to have something.
And I literally have nothing to write to Caesar about why I'm sending a prisoner for trial. And so to your point, that's right. Even afterwards with Agrippa's, deeper knowledge of Jewish ways and custom and culture and law and religion, Agrippa's looking at Festus saying, yeah, hate to be you. I don't know what to tell you to write either.
And so then, verse 32, if he hadn't appealed to Caesar,
He would have been set free.
he would have been, which may not have been safe for him anyway, but that would have been the outcome of all of this. So thinking back through the story up to this point, at first blush, it may have seemed like this terrible thing has happened to Paul.
Right.
That he's arrested and he's stuck in jail and he can't go. And yet, flip that over, and now we have three important dignitaries,
Right.
important officials, Festus, Felix, Agrippa.
Right.
And now he's had an opportunity to testify, to share the gospel. And we don't even begin to know how many others were in the room who heard this, how many other important people may have been influenced by the work that's being done. But sometimes in the bad things that happen to us, good things come.
And the irony is, the tragedy on the flip side for those officials is, whether it's Felix, Festus, or Agrippa, they admit the sanity of Paul's words, the truth of them, but they won't change their lives. And that's the tragedy, too, of the gospel really is the truth. And even the Romans are forced to admit that, more or less, and that it is not a threat to the empire. It is not, haters of mankind kind of thing. But they won't bend the knee.
And as you're so fond of saying, they won't bend the knee because the gospel's going to mess with their lives.
And that's the real issue.
It isn't because it isn't true.
Yeah.
But boy, what a difference it's going to make if I embrace it. So here's what you do with the podcast today. Listen to it for this week and then go back and grab it again for next week. You might just think about reading 25 and 26 together for the next 2 weeks, because that'll give you the picture of the whole story. So we hope you enjoy your reading this week.